Uh, we're out of summer. Some might say finally. I know my brother, who lives down around DC, he loves winter for some reason that I just simply cannot fathom. Um, I often ask him whether it's just whether he likes to see nature die, because that's all winter really looks to me like, is just skeletal trees and gray overcast clouds. The sun even doesn't even it doesn't seem to have the same shine and warmth to it. Well, obviously not the same warmth, but even the glow from the sun is just not the same that you get in summer. There's this distance and this in summer there's almost like, you if you want to make it sound poetic, like a familiarization that the sun has, like this intimate, um, like the sun is intimately looking down on you and casting this warm glow upon you as you walk, down the street or in the woods. Well, you don't have that in the winter. Rather, you have this kind of distant, cold, harsh, uh, deceptive, because the glow seems golden in the winter, but it's anything but rich and endearing, but instead rather baleful and just distant and uncaring. That's how winter feels like to me. If that sounds grim, that's because it is grim to me. Um, and as fate would have it, I live in an area in Pennsylvania. Well, just all of Pennsylvania is like this. The midway part of the country, where we suffer through all the seasons. Very vividly. Summer is hot, which I love, and you definitely know when spring is there and fall, and you know when winter is there because it's cold. So we have hot summers and cold winters, and I regret the cold winters very much. Uh, why was I not born down in like Alabama or Mississippi or New Orleans? All the places that I would like to have been born, I live nowhere near. But, whatever. Uh, you could say we know it's for the best because I was born in Pennsylvania. Anyway, this episode I wanted to talk about family. It's about a week late in coming. Last week there was just so much going on, which I'll kind of go over here now. My wife is with child, our second, and we found out it's a girl, thereby breaking the curse of the our family. I had four brothers, no sisters, and then my other brother who's married, they just had a daughter, so they beat us to it. But they also had a boy before that, and then we had a son. So it just seemed like this endless succession of men. Which, there's one thing that you can know by that, is that the Hayes name will never die out. That's for sure. We're here to stay, and we'll probably take over the world at this rate. But finally had a girl, and now we do. And last Monday or Tuesday was the ultrasound where they told us the gender, and we found out it was a girl. So that was a a really happy moment. That's kind of what we were hoping and praying for. Of course, I would have been happy with whether it was a boy or a girl. It does not matter. As long as the child is healthy, I'm happy. But it was so, or not it. She is a girl. And the baby seems to be coming along healthy, and that's great. Everything we hope for, obviously. And then after that, my dad had his birthday, and so we went out miniature golfing, and we went out to eat at the Outback after that. So it was just this good time of, just family. We go to the doctor's appointment, have some good news, and then this celebrate a birthday, my dad's birthday. And so it was, good. And it reminded me of, something that we take for granted, which is family unity. In this increasing isolation that I see, at least, throughout the country, of people in this. It's very easy to become isolated, I think, in this country today, because everything is so incredibly fast paced. It's very easy to get sucked into our own little worlds. That's what social media helps create too. Is your own little world. Where you feel like you're connecting with people all the time, but you're actually not. One of the most deceptive things also about Facebook in particular is that And I noticed this, when I was in my addiction. I would get on Facebook and I would see all these people that seemed to be just living the dream. They would post pictures of them in France, or at the beach, or here this person's getting engaged, or this person's with their family over here. And it gives you this impression, this false impression, that everybody's just hunky dory and living the dream and things couldn't be any better. But then you run into that person on the street, and then you realize that a lot of that's just a facade. Yeah, they went to France, but those pictures are 3 years old. They haven't been out of Delaware since then. Their marriage is rocky. Their kids are angry at them. They just crashed their car and they got laid off from their job. So, uh, now, of course, not everybody's story is that dark, but it's just, the point remains that social media kind of gives you this illusion, this very false illusion that everyone around you is living the life they want to live, and you're not, And so in an attempt, I think, that a lot of people feel to keep up with the Joneses, you start posting your own pictures of maybe a road trip you went on 5 years ago. You take, that's part of what I think this whole obsession with selfies is so that everyone around you can just think that you're living this awesome life. It's born out of envy, I think. Not a healthy sense of, I want what you have because what you have is good, but out of this envious competition of um, materialistic, um, just this drive to be better in everyone else's eyes. And it's very easy when you're doing that to lose sight of yourself, and also to lose sight of actual meaning in life. Everything just becomes another selfie, another post on Facebook, another tweet. How many likes does this picture get, rather than actually living in the moment and experiencing that, say, trip to go miniature golfing, or the meal you had at the Outback with your family, rather than setting your phone aside and actually enjoying a conversation, something very few of us do anymore. Have a lengthy conversation just about life, and what's going on in your life. Rather than doing that, we pick up the phone and we're snapping pictures of, oh, look what the chef just brought out. Let's arrange our asparagus so it looks beautiful next to our filet mignon, and then post that on Facebook. And, oh, gee, look, cool. I had a good day because 75 people liked it, gave it a thumbs up. 13 people are commenting on it saying, oh, I too had a good experience at the Outback. Look, I'm connecting with my friends. Look, guys, I had a great weekend. I went to the Outback with my family. Look at all the selfies. So there's the proof that I actually did this thing. Look, we're all smiling, so it was a great time in the pictures. And look at all these people that also went to the Outback. So I'm tired right now, but you do all these things in lieu of actual, like, relationships, actual conversation, actual connecting. You think that the comments on your Facebook mean you connected with somebody in California. No, you didn't. They weren't there. You didn't share the moment with them. Have they ever visited Delaware? Do they know what you look like in person? Do they know anything about you? No, you didn't connect with them. It's just another isolated person across the country who's actually probably just as lonely as you are, and trying to keep up this facade in the same way that you are, that your life is perfect on the outside and that other people should envy you in the same way that you envy others. And I think that that this social media obsession is really detrimental to family relationships. This obsession with the outside appearance means that we spend very little time on, like, inner relationships. Um, and I think that, well, it's been said many times before that the family is the cornerstone of society. You remove the cornerstone, you remove the family, and there really isn't a whole lot left. How else can kids learn to learn what it means to be a mother, except through watching their mother, a good mother? Or how can a boy, a young boy, learn to be a man if he doesn't have a good father there showing him what that looks like? And you're not going to learn it on Facebook. You're not going to learn it in social media, that's for sure. All you get on there is just bitterness, because you'll see constant pictures and photographs of what should be, a man standing there like with his son right next to him, and a hunting rifle and a deer they just killed. But you don't know anything about them, their personal life. All you get is an image of what should be, and you think, I should have that. And it just creates this false sense of what a family is without the real value behind it, an image. We've become a very image-driven society. The image has largely replaced word. Um, but I think that we would all be um, hard pressed to admit that, or to deny the fact that this social media obsession has not had an impact on our lives. They've produced some pretty solid evidence, I think, that how addicting cell phones can be. I run into this kind of stuff all the time. I'll sit down on the couch, and there's my wife over there and my son over there, and the next thing I know, I have my iPhone in my hand, and rather than paying attention to them or talking to them, or even I'll just be sitting there in a conversation with her, and I'll realize, and I mean, believe me, if you talk to her, she'll tell you this. I'll have an entire conversation with her while I'm reading something on my phone, and I'll be saying, yeah, 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 and actually giving responses back, but yet really have no idea what I just heard, or what she just said, or anything like that. It's like you're on autopilot. And a lot of people are talking about this, that they just go on autopilot, and you're in this little world. You're sucked into this world on your tablet, on your phone, on your laptop, and it's robbing, I think, families of these moments where they could be connecting, moments that actually would mean something. Because when you're on your deathbed, how many of us are going to care at all, whether your photo got 56 tweets or relikes, or somebody commented, "Oh, I went to the Caribbean and I saw that too." Who cares? Nobody cares. But at the moment, you're like, "Oh, cool! Look how popular I am." No, you're not popular. You're a loser. Because on your deathbed, you're going to look back on that and be like, right, my wife was sitting right there, and rather than talking to her, I was looking at she was talking to me. I ignored everything she said, but yet the whole time I was staring at a picture of a family I don't know, who got to go on a cruise in the Bahamas, and yeah, I basically just sat there and was jealous of their life, rather than actually building a relationship with my wife. These are the kinds of things we're going to regret in the end, I think. And all the research, everything people are talking about these days, is that technology is only going to make this harder. It's not going to get easier. With virtual reality just around the corner, artificial intelligence just around the corner, they're doing everything they can to make it so that technology and these artificial worlds are there to supplant the real world. Um, Oftentimes I wonder whether this is like some kind of concerted effort, like a conspiracy. And I know that as soon as you mention that word, most people just shut off the YouTube video. Who wants to listen to that? But it is true. I mean, think about it. That right now, our society is engaged in this obsession with denying reality, as far as gender, as far as abortion, whether something's a child in the womb. All of the science says that it is, but yet because it's convenient, it's not a child. Because I want to be a different gender, I'm going to deny biological reality, and it just goes on and on. There's right now we're just obsessed with controlling reality, and the technology is there only to further enhance that, to give you the perception, or the the illusion that you can do this, that if you plug into these worlds, these artificial worlds, that you can live out the world or the life that you feel like you should have had to begin with. All of this is born out of jealousy and envy and all the things that are basically condemned in the Bible. This is not healthy thinking. And one only wonders how much more this is going to affect like family relationships. um, I think mentioning the Bible, I think it is interesting as far as family goes. I was thinking about this the other day. The way the family kind of everything in reality, it seems to me, is like a picture, especially in the Bible, a picture of like God's relationship with us. So, like in the family, you have the father, who is basically your role model for God in a lot of ways. That's how children are very often introduced to God, is through the example that the father gives. A spirit. That's why the father is supposed to be the spiritual role model. And then you have that relationship between the children and their father, much the same way that God is our spiritual father. And then you have the inner dynamics of the family, kind of the way, um, I guess, the way you're sanctified. But then you also have marriage itself, which is kind of a picture of Christ and the church. The church is often called like the bridegroom of Christ. Um, and so the more I see the family kind of crumble and deteriorate, and people not investing as much time and effort into experiencing what it's like to have a family, the more these things fall apart, the more you kind of realize what it is we're actually losing. That, and if you read the Bible, you kind of see like how God didn't just put these things here just for the fun of it, but this stuff is actually fundamental and foundational just to living life. If you want to have a positive, happy life, these aren't just like the family as a unit. Isn't just there because it's for some trivial reason. Just, oh, that's how it is. That's why it's so stupid and ridiculous to say, and so blasphemous, really, to say that this stuff all just evolved by chance, out of some heartless, cold desire to survive, and that was it. And that's all it's there for, which is basically Darwinian evolution. The family unit is there just to promote survival, and that's it. I mean, you can't think of anything more cold and barren and heartless than that. Um, does nothing to explain the warmth and the connection and the love and the trust and the leadership and the inner, just all the inner dynamic and relationships that go on in a normal family and a healthy family. It can't explain all that, but the Bible can. It surely can. Just the symbolism of a marriage between like. How Christ is with the church, is married to the church. All of these things have their picture, are pictures of spiritual realities and truths. Perhaps that's why the family unit is under such attack today, because of what it means as a symbol of spiritual truths and spiritual realities. Um, Perhaps that's why it's being decimated in our culture today. Not too long ago, I read that at least in the African American community, the fatherlessness rate is upwards of 70%. I mean, God only knows the devastation that's wrecking on the inner city urban communities in the cities. What kind of effect does that have when there is no father in the house, and the only father these kids know in these inner cities, in these um, tough neighborhoods, is one that's deserted the home, or is in and out of prison, or is selling drugs, or is been arrested for murder or something like that, is just is a name but not a face, not anyone they really know. Um, eh, we're seeing the effects of that constantly. All these lost kids, these kids that are now selling drugs and following in the footsteps of their parents. really, whose father did the same, and then it just goes down this long line of failure, and it's broken out of the inner city to affect. The rates are going up dramatically also in white communities too. And that's not a wonder or a mystery. I was in a conversation with a counselor that I have, and we were talking about that, why there's such a high fatherlessness rate in the African American community. She's African American, and I was saying I think it's a moral issue because you can point, or I was just saying I think it's a moral issue. I think that good values, Christian values, aren't being taught the way they should be in these inner city communities, that the church has largely failed there and has fallen out of its central position in the community. And what's replaced it instead is an immoral or amoral federal government who's just cutting checks, and whatever you have to say to receive that check, they'll say. If you have to say, "Oh, my back hurts, so I can get on welfare," they'll say, "Oh, my back hurts, so they can get on welfare." Um, I've known several different women in Wilmington that intentionally had children with as many different fathers as they possibly could to receive the maximum amount of money from the government in recompense, because the fathers surely weren't stepping up and paying for their children with child support. So they went to the government and said, "Hey, I don't have a job. I'm on welfare to begin with, and now I have 7, 8 kids from 7, 8 different guys. Um, you need to support me, chump." And Uncle Sam snaps to and starts cutting checks. And then they learn that this works. So if you're going to get a check for sleeping around and not getting a job, why would you better yourself if you can do it that way? Laziness is a deadly adversary, and a lot of people fall to it. Oops, I'm gonna knock over the camera. Um, everybody struggles with laziness. If you can just, do the easy thing, it's very hard to say no to that when you know that success is right around the corner. Just do the easy thing, the thing that comes easy. Um, but then we wonder, when the church has fallen out of the community, why so many men are ending up in prison and everything. But anyway, so I told her that. I told her I think it's because the church has failed in its mission of preaching the gospel, of preaching what sin is, and what, our relationship to God, that He's the Creator, we're the created, and He has these set of rules in the Bible, this expectation of how you should live, and that largely the church has not succeeded in or is not doing. It's not fulfilling its mission, its purpose, which is to preach the gospel and the counsel of God, which is revelation, the Bible, special revelation. It's not doing that, and instead it's compromising these seeker-friendly churches, which are more there to just take care of people's felt needs. A lot of contemporary churches today, rather than having the focus on God, the focus is on the individual outside the church. So they're not even focusing on the actual members of the church who profess to be Christians. Rather, what they're focusing on and trying to please, when I say focusing on, I'm talking about pleasing, is the sinner outside the church. And you may say, well, we're trying to reach them, evangelize them. That doesn't mean that you kowtow to their expectations of how worship should be. Somebody who's not a Christian, who has no concept of God or how God expects to be worshipped, should not be setting the standard for how we should worship in church. And yet that's what essentially is happening. These churches are saying that, well, this is what it would attract people to come in here, and so that's what we're going to do in our worship service. And that's just completely backwards, failed concept of how to evangelize. All that does is tell the world that the church, A, does not have a backbone, B, that it will kowtow to any social fad, that is going on out there. That it will literally get down on its knees and just beg people to come in with the most. Right, just recently, the Anglican Church in England had a sort of carnival inside one of its cathedrals just because they were so desperate to attract people in. This was over in London, I believe, and the Anglican bishop ended up giving his sermon at the top of this helter skelter. Um, I think it was like a merry-go-round or something like that, or it wasn't a merry-go-round that he preached from. It was like a long slide, and he was halfway up this giant slide. They brought a carnival into a cathedral, for goodness sakes. I mean, of all the profane things you could possibly do. But that tells you all you need to know right there of where the church is at. So this is the church that is supposed to be building and communities and enriching communities and preaching the counsel of God, the gospel. And it's just utterly failed. And so that was my opinion on it. And basically, she didn't agree with that at all. She said that, and this will be, a topic for another episode. But she basically said that the reason there is such a high fatherlessness rate in the African American community is because of systemic racism with the police force, arresting black people in disproportionate numbers. Some of that may be true, but I've seen a lot of pushback to that kind of thinking that how true that really is. I don't believe it's true enough to where the numbers it can account for upwards of 70% fatherlessness rate in the African American community. I don't think it can account for such high numbers. I really don't. And if it's true that that's partially or even mostly to blame, let's say that for the sake of argument she's right, and it's all systemic racism, then why is it that the white community now is also having skyrocketing fatherlessness rates in their families too? Why are their families also disintegrating? You can't say that it's systemic racism there as well. That just wouldn't. That would kind of negate your argument. So it doesn't hold for me that this could all be pointed to as racism. Are there some bad cops out there that go around disproportionately abusing African Americans in the inner city? Sure, I'm sure there are. But is the police force on the whole systemically racist and racially motivated in a negative way? No, I don't think so. And I've never seen any hard evidence to actually back that up. I think rather it holds true what I say that the main fault for crime and this fatherlessness rate in these communities is the failure of the church. And that's our failure. Those of us who go to church, who claim the name of Christ, that's our failure. The family is our responsibility, those of us who have families. And even if you don't have your own individual family, let's say you're not married and you don't have kids, you are still a part of a family, and you should operate as such. And do everything you can to make sure your family, the one you're a part of, is operating in a healthy, godly, Christian manner. Now, there's a whole spiel, a whole series of lectures that could be given, not by me, certainly not, but that could be given on what that looks like, what a healthy family looks like. And I'm certainly no expert on any of this, really. These are all just my thoughts and opinions. Take them for what they are. But I don't think, and I will say that, years ago, before I had my own family, I didn't live up to any of these standards. I will always say that in these podcasts, that a lot of the things that I've done in the past, or even the things I struggle on now, I'm not judging anyone in that sense. I either struggle with things or I failed to live up to them in the past. I have a long road ahead of me in a lot of ways. Everybody does. And so before I had my own family, I was closed off, like any miserable teenager through high school. And then when I got out of high school, I rebelled and went and did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done that were just sin, let's be honest. So I didn't do these things. But, it's in looking back that I realized the failure there, the sin there, and what I shouldn't have done, and everything I want to do right now, which is to to turn off the phone, get off of Facebook, turn off YouTube, and actually pay attention to what people are saying. Now, if my wife watches this, she'll probably laugh, because I still have the phone on sometimes, but I at least recognize that it's something I really need to work on, and it is, and it's something we all do. Nobody's innocent, Anybody who has a phone knows what I'm talking about. With one click, I mean, this instant demand for what's going on. Your Twitter feed is a second by second update. Believe me, I know. When Kavanaugh was having his whole thing going on, I was getting second by second updates of the Senate hearings as it was happening, as if I was sitting in the room. People were, all these different feeds are just updating me on, okay, this senator just said this senator just yelled at Kavanaugh just said this, Donald Trump just tweeted this in response. You're getting all this in immediate live time, as if you're there. Except better, because you're getting perspectives from everybody there simultaneously. And you wouldn't even have that if you were sitting in the room. So in a way, in that sense, it's even better than being there. That's a freaky thing when you think about it. But anyway, the bottom line in all this is that I think where we should put our focus, and I hope everybody just at least takes this and applies it to their own life in a small way, is that when we're all on our deathbeds, the things that we're going to look back on are not moments on Twitter. It's not going to be how many miserable, whatever minuscule, stupid number of followers you have on Facebook or some freaking thing like Twitter, or whether I got a new subscriber on YouTube, my YouTube channel. No, none of that matters at all. What matters is your relationships with your family, your loved ones. Those are the things that we should care about. This world has gotten on for such a long time without things like social media or telephones or any of this crap that really is, I don't think, when you weigh the net benefits, I think it's more of a drawback than a positive. The world has survived for a long time without any of this technology, and it probably, arguably, was better without it. Than we are now. Just the narcissistic insecurity, the envy, the greed, the me that is all coming out of this. This obsession with self on social media. It's not good, and it certainly in no way helps the family when we all sit down. Instead of turning off the TV and having a conversation, we watch Keeping Up with the Kardashian reruns while we eat our TV dinners. Okay. Well, anyway, that's my episode for the week. There's going to be another one of those quick thought videos later in the week on environmentalism and why it is, not an accusation, but just a question on my part, why there doesn't seem to be more concern among Christians and conservatives about our environmental state in the country. And I'll go over with you then exactly what I'm trying to get at. I'm not becoming a traitor and thinking that we should dig up the new Green Deal. Nothing like that. But at the same time, I see two extremes here. You have AOC and all the rest of the nutcases over there on the progressive left with their Green New Deal, Bernie Sanders, all of them. But then I don't see, on the opposite side, it seems to be a lot of people that just don't address the issue at all. The Amazon is burning right now, and I don't hear a whole lot on the conservative side about it at all, except to yell at the AOC side of things, the progressive side, and yell at them for kind of using this as fodder to promote climate change. That here's man again destroying the environment. Uh, but I don't see a whole lot of genuine concern to dwindling elephant populations in or in Africa, in Botswana, or any of these places. In the logging industry's mutilation of the Congo rainforest or the Indonesian rainforest, or any of these things, the evaporation of or the total destruction of the um, the orangutan populations in Sumatra, any of this stuff. I just don't. I hear about it from the progressive left, and which is great, but their solutions are insane. But then the conservative side, which I agree with on most things, they're like silent on the issue, except to throw rocks at the progressives because they're insane. And so you have these polar opposite sides, and the issues not actually being addressed. And so I'm going to talk about that because this has been bothering me for a little while. I will say there was one conservative that I've heard routinely talk about like dwindling elephant populations in Africa, and I'll talk about him too when we do the episode. So stay tuned for that. That'll be this week. It's one of those quick thought videos. Last week I did one on the Rapture, which got back a few comments. I'll talk a little bit about that too in the video, but it'll be a short video. Anyway, this is the episode on the family this week. Turn this off and go spend time with your family. Good night, and God be with you.